Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I start by congratulating my right honourable friend and parliamentary neighbour for securing this debate and for making the case so eloquently and so forcefully, not just on behalf of his own constituents, but actually on behalf of my constituents, and as he rightly pointed out from the various comments that we have both been getting in the lobby in the votes just now, on behalf of a great deal more constituencies right the way across the country too. I want to pick up on a couple of the points he made just very briefly, because I want to leave time for the Minister to respond, to say he's absolutely right to say that North Somerset as a whole has absorbed a huge amount of housing over the last 50 years. We cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, be described as NIMBYs. We have taken enormous numbers of houses, and we are happy to take more if they are in the right places. Because, as he rightly points out, there are many, many, many local residents who want their children to be able to afford to live locally, who don't want to be forced to move away and only come back when they've made their fortunes if they can. That is clearly not the right way to do it. It is clearly not the right way to have sustainable and balanced communities either. And so therefore we want to be able to have enough houses for this to be affordable. So both of us and many local residents agree with the notion that we have to build more houses as a country as a whole. But the question is where we build them and why the existing system is forcing people to build in the wrong places in the wrong ways. Now, he's also right to point out that if we stick with the current approach, then we stand absolutely no chance of actually delivering on the number of houses which are required. Not because there aren't enough places with planning permission, not because there isn't enough permitted areas that has already been where planning permission has already been agreed, but simply because the existing house builders have a business model which requires them to dribble out houses at no more than a preset rate, about 800 every year in our areas, consistently over many, many years, in order to avoid deflating the cost of housing if they build too fast, and therefore ruining their investments. So we will never get to the numbers which the Housing Minister rightly is setting for the entire country if we don't change something soon. And so therefore I would urge the Housing Minister to consider that Weston-super-Mare, perhaps some of the areas in my right honourable friend's constituency, but certainly central Bristol, should be willing to take more homes in the middle of towns, rather than in the areas which he rightly pointed out, on his nicely coloured in map, are not available to be built on outside towns. Central Western needs investment. Central Western would be delighted to have more homes built in the right places. And one of the advantages of the government's latest set of proposals for permitted development rights with carefully constructed local council approved planning guidelines is that, very, very briefly, but I must not take up too much time.
And I congratulate the honourable member, right honourable member for North Somerset, for getting this German debate. Does the honourable member agree with me that one of the issues is about density of dwelling planning, and that this is one of the issues with this proposed white paper, is that we will have less control over what sort of densities will get built out by the developers?
Actually, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would respectfully disagree with that last point, because local authorities will be able to set development codes which will be able to dictate the level of density, and they can also dictate the look and feel of the areas too. As a result, places like Central Western, currently on average 2 stories tall, places like Central Bristol, also lots of it 2 stories tall, could easily, and in the case of Central Western, gladly, absorb more homes if we were able to go up to 4 stories tall. Not the Shard, as my right honourable friend rightly points out. That would be completely inappropriate. But if we go up to 4 or maybe 5 stories at the outside, elegant townhouses, mews houses, the sorts of things which we are proud to look at in parts of Western already, certainly in parts of Central Bristol, certainly in parts of Bath. Those kinds of beautiful bits of architecture, more dense but beautifully put together, could absorb all the homes if we were only able to do it. But the current system, the current method of allocating those homes does not allow us to do it, because local authorities don't get credit for if they start to allocate building in those areas.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. Will he accept that his argument is further strengthened by the fact that the housing density in many of our cities in the United Kingdom is well below the sort of level of housing density that is taken for granted in most cities in Europe.
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. And the point about it is that if we do it this way around, then we are using existing infrastructure rather than overburdening the already stretched infrastructure in our rural areas. It is greener because people can live closer to work. If we start building yet more in rural villages, in my case, places like Churchill or Langford or Congsbury, then at that point, we just create commuter towns or commuter villages, and we just add to the level of commuting carbon footprint as a result. If people can live near where they work, which is much more COVID-friendly as well, then we stand a chance of creating greener, more sustainable communities and ones where investment is desired. But it does require the government to change the process, change the way it gives credit for the sites that are thus created, in order to make sure that the big box builders whose whole business plan is based around building on greenfield sites don't get the only view of the situation, and town centre development, city centre development becomes a route for councils to satisfy the housing numbers that they are required to build.